Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with the profile for my Crystron Toolbox deck, 2020 edition. Once more, you can experience the thrill of synchro summoning Trishula during your opponent's turn. Now made 69% easier with the inclusion of Halqifibrax, one of the most broken Link monsters ever printed. Now, if you just want to see this thing in action, check out the main What a Deck video link down in the description. There, I'll be playing 10 duels against random opponents and showing off how this thing works. Otherwise, here I'm just going to be going card by card, explaining what everything is and why we play it. Starting off with our monster lineup, we have 3 Crystron Solfefnir, 3 Kiss from a Rosenix, 3 Thyvis Turn Down for What, 3 Benoit Mandelbrot, 3 Eye of the Smyger, 3 Foolish Burial Bot. We play 2 Rion and he dances in the sand, 2 Turtle Power, Best Girl and a Jet, Glow Up Bulb, and 3 Thinly Veiled Threats. For spells, we've got 1 for 1, Actual Foolish Burial, 3 Called by the Gravy, Twin Twisters, and 3 Amazon Warehouse during Christmas. Our only traps are 1 Jar of Recovery, 3 Impactful Traps, and 3 traps we hope will have an impact. Our extra deck contains 3 copies of the artist formerly known as Needlefiber, my boy, 2 Crystron Trishula, Sky Striker's Worst Nightmare, 1 Actual Trishula, Whale Force, 2 of the best synchro tuners, a car, a knife, Wabaku on legs, and this thing we use to make Whale Force. The side deck I'll go over in a bit, although it's about half actual side deck cards and half just alternative options to consider when making this deck for yourself. Yes, you can make Cosmic Blazer Dragon during your opponent's turn with this, and if the main video gets 1,000 likes, I'll make a profile for that. For now, though, this deck. I'd say it's a fairly standard Crystron deck, but that implies there's enough Crystron players for there to be a standard. If you're unfamiliar with the archetype, it's really weird and complicated. Their main gimmick, though, is synchro summoning during the opponent's turn in really roundabout ways. For example, Crystron Citri is a tuner that says, during your opponent's main or battle phase, you can target any non-tuner in the graveyard and summon it with its effects negated. Then, using only that card and Citri, synchro summon a machine monster, but banish the materials instead of sending them to the graveyard. Your other tuner, Rion, can do essentially the same thing, except he summons a non-tuner that is banished, and the materials are shuffled back into the deck when you synchro with them. These effects by themselves are not all that great. There's not a lot of machine-type synchro monsters that have a high impact during the opponent's turn. Like, you can make Powered and Zektron pretty easily. It says you take no damage the turn it's summoned, so your opponent literally can't kill you that turn, but that doesn't exactly further your win condition. However, the one good card you can make is Crystron Quandax. This is a machine synchro that just happens to be a tuner, and it says during your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can synchro summon with this card and any other monsters you control. This effect has no restrictions on what you can summon, so if you make Quandax and you have like a level 4 on your field like Rosenix, you can make White or a Whale during your opponent's turn. This card, in addition to a whole bunch of other effects, says, when it's synchro summoned, destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. That's why I call it Whale Force, because it's Mirror Force in whale form. And summoning it while the opponent is trying to do things can be pretty devastating to them. This is how the deck wins. You set up a board on your turn so that, when your opponent starts to play, you can interrupt them with powerful synchros that decimate their field on summon. White Aura Whale is actually one of the weaker cards we have in that regard. Trishula is non-targeting banishment for the hand, field, and graveyard. Phoenix banishes all the spell traps on your opponent's field and in their graveyard. And Quariongandrax, in addition to being really fun to say, can banish up to 3 of your opponent's monsters, regardless of if they're on the field or in the graveyard. I play this at 2 because in the current format, I find this is the most devastating first turn summon, which is good because it's also one of the easiest to summon, thanks to our new friend, Halqifibrax. If you're unfamiliar with this infamous link, it requires 2 monsters, including at least 1 tuner to summon it. It summons any level 3 or lower tuner from the deck when it's summoned, and during the opponent's turn, it can banish itself to summon a synchro tuner from the extra deck. It's because of this that we only run one Quandrax, and instead mostly rely on shooting Riser Dragon. This is a tuner synchro, it can sync during the opponent's main phase, and most importantly, when it's summoned, you can send a monster from your deck to the graveyard to lower this thing's level by the level of the monster you sent. Crystrons range in levels from 2 to 5, and all of the non-tuners have effects that activate in the graveyard, so not only can this thing easily adjust its levels to suit whatever synchro you're trying to make, but you can gain advantage in the process. Using this and our good friend Hal, we can set up for Quariongandrax with just one card. More importantly though, that one card can be either Scrap Recycler or Mathematician. Let's go to the combo footage. First, normal summon your Mathman or your Scrap Recycler. In this case, we're going with Scrap, but again, either one works. Use their effect to send Jet Synchron to the graveyard. Discard a card to summon Jet Synchron from the graveyard, and use it and Scrap to make the Crystron link. The link will summon a tuner from the deck, and you'll want to choose Citri. Now pass to your opponent's turn. Once your opponent has committed a few monsters to the field, use Citri's effect and try to summon High Speedroid Chambara using the Scrap Recycler in the graveyard. I say try because you're actually going to chain Halqifibrax to this effect, summoning Shooting Riser Dragon. Because a non-link is now in the extra monster zone, Citri's effect can't resolve properly. It summons the non-tuner, but you can't synchro since you have no open zones. Riser's effect now triggers, allowing you to send a monster from your deck to the graveyard to lower its level. Send a level 3 monster from your deck to make Riser level 4. Quariongandrax is a level 9 that takes 2 tuners and 1 non-tuner. And that's exactly what you have on the field now, so summon away and banish your opponent's playmakers. Now that one card combo is great and everything, but the coolest thing about it is that the exact same setup can also be used to make Crystron Phoenix. Let's go back to the start of your opponent's turn. Same exact setup as before, but let's say instead of summoning 3 monsters, your opponent starts setting a bunch of spell traps or activating pendulum scales. Use Citri's effect to make High Speedroid Chambara and actually let it go through. After that, then summon Shooting Riser Dragon and again send a level 3. Phoenix is a level 9 that requires 2 synchro monsters to make, and now that is what you have on the field, so summon it and wipe your opponent's board. Again, both those combos, one card, and if you open with Crystron Sulfefnir or a way to search it, your options get even better, because this lets you put another monster on board in addition to your normal summon. Its effect is, if it's in the hand or graveyard, you can discard a Crystron to summon it, and then immediately pop a card you control. 99% of the time, you're going to use it to pop itself, because when Sulfie is destroyed, it summons any Crystron from the deck. This additional monster on the field opens up a ton of new plays for you. If you summon a Rosenix, that gives you the ability to make White Aura Whale. Summon a Turtle, and you can make Trishula in a kind of roundabout way. Summon Rion, and you can add a Powered Insectron or a Dawn Dragster on top of the standard combo, or just give yourself a backup if Citri gets negated by something. There's a lot of options, and that's just the cards I chose to show here. You can just as easily put in either of the Black Rose Dragons in here, Stardust Warrior, Satellite Warrior, Psyframe Lord Omega. There's a ton of possibilities, including even huge boss monsters like Blazar and Red Supernova. Unfortunately, I just don't have the time to go over all of them, so I'm going to have to stop here and explain the rest of the deck, but just know that there's a lot of different cool stuff you can do. Anyway, all the non-tuner Crystrons except Sulfefnir have a shared effect that allows you to pop a card you control to summon a Crystron tuner from the deck. If you do, though, you can't summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except for machine-type synchro monsters. So only use that effect if you plan to make Quariongandrax on your turn, or if you've already made Halqifibrax. If Hal gets hit with Infinite Impermanence or Ash or something, this is also a good way to get a backup Citri on your field so you can still combo off. In addition to that, all of the non-tuners have a unique effect that you can activate on your turn by banishing them from the graveyard. Rose summons a level 1 token. Turtle lets you special summon a Crystron from your hand. Divistern searches any Crystron monster, which makes him a great target to pitch with Mathematician, Scrap Recycler, Twin Twisters, 1-for-1 Jet Synchron, etc., because all of that is going to allow you to get into Sulfefnir. Smyger, meanwhile, banishes itself to search a Crystron spell trap. We only have one of those, but it's pretty good. Crystron Impact lets you summon a banished Crystron monster. Simple but effective. Not only can you use this to recover your Crystrons to make specific synchros, but can also summon back Hal during your opponent's turn, who can promptly use his effect to summon a Riser Dragon, which makes this a pretty good second turn card if you don't have the resources to make another Hal yourself. In addition to that, you can even get your boss monsters back if they happen to get banished, which happens quite a lot with White Aura Whale, who can banish a water monster to revive itself out of the graveyard. Most of the time, though, if you want to get your boss monsters back, you're going to be doing it with Magnet Reverse. This basically lets you summon any machine-type extra deck monster that is in your grave or banished. So you make your big boss monsters, link them away on your turn to clear out the extra monster zone, and then use this to bring them back so you have extra damage. In a pinch, you can also use this to get Hal back, similar to how you would use it with Crystron Impact. The only other must-play card in here is Glow Up Bulb, which basically serves the same exact role as Jet Synchron. It's not a machine, so you can't send it off of Scrap Recycler, but it doesn't require a discard to summon itself out of the graveyard. So if you open with Mathematician and no other Crystrons in hand, you can use this and still do your combo. All the remaining cards in here are tech cards. The reason we play so many, why we have a 50-card deck, is because we've got these Crystron tuners that we don't want to draw. We want to summon them out of the deck, but we also have to play multiples in order for our plays to be repeatable. By making the deck bigger, it's less likely that we'll draw them, or at least less likely that we'll draw multiples of them in our opening hand, and we'll still be able to combo several turns in a row. As for why I chose the tech cards I did, Effect Veiler, it's a tuner. You can summon it off of 1-for-1 to make Hal, or summon it off of Hal if you're running low on Crystron tuners. Assuming you have Sulfefnir to put a non-tuner on the field, you can actually make most of your synchros still just by using this and sending a different card off of Riser Dragon. Called by the Grave, meanwhile, is here because we're really weak to hand traps. Twin Twisters because it's YGOPro and I need to be prepared for Dark Magicians. Solemn Strike because it's a high-impact card with a tolerable cost, and Supply Squad because we're almost always searching Sulfefnir, who we're going to use every turn to blow itself up. That in combination with this will give us a steady stream of cards on top of the things we're already searching. 1-for-1 and Foolish should be pretty obvious now that you know about the deck, and Jar of Avarice is here because the deck often gets dragged into a grind game, and sometimes I need to summon a Phoenix or a Trishula again, and this helps me do that by shuffling them back into the extra deck. Pot of Acquisitiveness can do almost the same thing, and can be a nice side option against decks that are banishing your dudes. As for the rest of the side deck, Solemn Judgment I had in here for a while instead of Strike, but because I have such a big deck, I often drew it mid-game, and this does nothing against established fields, because the one thing it can't stop is monster effects. Still, if Veiler or Twisters is not working, these can be a good replacement. I would recommend them for the side deck. Speaking of Twisters, there's a third one in here for if you do go against Dark Magicians. And finally, Ghost Bell. I had this in place of the Veilers for the longest time, since this is a graveyard-heavy format, and we lose to a well-timed Called by the Grave, which this stops. In the end, though, it was just a bit too situational for YGOPro. Really, though, any of the tuner hand traps work really well in here, especially Ghost Ogre, who can activate her effect when she's on the field, which gives you some added utility if you have to summon her off of Hal. Link Kuriboh is another decent option. If you open with Glow Up Bulb or Jet Synchron, you can summon them, make Kuriboh, then summon them back out of the graveyard for an easy Halqifibrax. The only problem is, unless you have a way to get another monster on the field, you won't be able to make your plays because there won't be anything in the graveyard for Sitri to summon. In the end, it was just a little bit too situational, so I booted it out from a Starboy, which can help you push for game in some instances. Finally, there's Starlight Junction, great card in this deck if you're in a slower format but not really good enough now. And then the super boss monsters I mentioned earlier, as well as some cards you'll need to put in if you want to summon them. Again, if the main video gets enough attention, I'll make a combo tutorial for that. For now, though, that's the deck. Like the video if you liked it, comment if there's any changes you would make, and subscribe if you want more strange Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profiles. I do one of these every other week. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, good luck, and have fun.